Don't you do it, don't hurt him.
R&B overall, I love it. The reason I love it and I love where it is now, because I think more creativity is promoted. I think there's pros and cons between the R&B we know, which is what I call the R&B you love, and the R&B we get today. Although my mission is to show how those two can intersect and connect, and how you can still, because the R&B we love is all about the feeling. So my mission with my music is to recreate that feeling, to show people that you can still get R&B today that feels like, you know, what we know. But I appreciate the risks and chances that R&B artists take today, because before, pros and cons, which I'll explain, but before there was a very specific formula, and it was like, you can only do this. So I think anything has to advance and have progress, and you don't get that by suppressing people's ideas. You need the next thing, and you know, it's not always, everybody's not, you know, gonna always like it. It won't always be amazing, but somebody has something that can push the genre forward. But you don't get that by making everybody fit into the same box. So I will say, I think that people overall can be a little more appreciative and show a little more grace with the creatives today, because I think that I see a lot of people like be discouraging to creatives because they do something that is not what they are used to. But I will say, in my research, I've been able to identify things I don't like in every era of R&B, the same way I've been able to identify things that I do like. So this idea that bad R&B takes started with my generation, no, I disagree with that, because I've heard the songs from the 90s and the 80s and the early 2000s that weren't like the ones that we talk about the most. So I think one of the biggest differences, though, is from a cultural standpoint. I would say one of the biggest differences is having the platforms. Like, R&B is black music, and there used to be places you can exclusively go to listen to black music, and we've lost that. And I think that, which is why I'm always appreciative for the platforms who champion R&B and give us a space to talk about it, because we don't have it like that anymore. And so I think that and it's especially tough for male R&B. I think that male R&B at this point is like intentionally being suppressed. It doesn't meet the same opportunities of any other like facet of, you know, of R&B artists. And so I think it's mainly, I hear the complaints about the quality control thing. That just comes from streaming era. Like, it's different. You got to think about the chances of somebody having a studio in their home in the 90s, in the early 2000s, was not nearly as great as now. So you had to go to a studio. You had to be around 10 other people who would say this sucks or it doesn't before you could even put it out, because there were like limited distributors. So it's not like you have the option. Like now, I can go home, I can wake up right now, say whatever I want to on a mic, mix it however I think it's being mixed, create some artwork, and upload it and pick a release date all in like 30 minutes, and nobody can tell me anything, and it could be the worst song ever. So I do think that that was a pro of the R&B we know, which is having the community that the songs would have to run through, because then people were able to be honest. But now, because you can do this all by yourself, you don't necessarily warrant the opinions of other people until the art is already out. So I think that that is the part that people complain about. I think we can find a better way to express it, but I think the complaint is just that the quality control is different, because now you have to sift through millions of songs to find what you like. But that's not the fault of the artist. That's just technological advancement, in my opinion. But the R&B is out there. I know it's out there because I'm making it. And so I have a lot of friends and contemporaries who are also making the type of R&B that I know that people love. So I think we just got to change the conversation, focus more on promoting what we like instead of hot takes talking about what we don't like. Just give that energy to artists that you want people to champion behind and support. So my album, The R&B You Love, it's a concept album, one, but it's The R&B You Love is a movement, and it's all about showing how classic R&B and modern R&B can exist in the same space without feeling like there's a huge disconnect between the feelings. Because I've noticed when we talk about classic records, what we like about them in any genre is all connected to a feeling. And it's the fact that you can play that song and get that same feeling every single time. And so I think for me, what I wanted to do, considering social media and how everything happens today, it was also important for me to introduce my listeners to my heroes, because I think a lot of times we look at like TikTok and like we get a lot of remixes and people don't even know where these songs come from. So you'll hear a song and then they'll be like, have you heard that new song from? You're like, man, that's like 50 years old. That's a remake, or you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people don't know that. So the R&B You Love for me is all about nostalgia and connecting today with the past, because I think that it would be a disservice to like listeners today to not let them know like how amazing these artists were that came before us. You know, like with the exception of like really somebody like Michael Jackson, like not many artists now have made it to like today's listeners. Like there are a lot of people that we grew up on that we know are incredible. Like the chances of talking to like a 14, 15-year-old and asking them if they know Stevie Wonder today, like they probably would not even be able to name a Stevie Wonder song. And that's not okay. Like, you know what I mean? So the R&B You Love for me is just all about leading people back to the R&B that we love, and then also giving them something new to connect to it so that they realize that they don't have to choose between modern music and classic music. Like it could all be done in the same space. Something really cool that I decided to do with the R&B You Love, instead of, so it also touches on the different eras of R&B, from the 70s to the 90s to the early 2000s to like more modern stuff. And so something I decided to do instead of a traditional deluxe was expand on those eras and make all my deluxe versions extensive versions of, you know, or expansions of those eras. And so they're all called the R&B You Love, but you have the R&B You Love album. First deluxe I put out was called the R&B Love Soul of the 70s. That one took the 70s inspired records from the album, and I gave new records to so you can hear them in a different context. The next one is called the R&B You Love for the 99 and the 2000. This is the one that touches on the 90s records and the early 2000s records to give more context. So I'm super, super excited about that. And I have been talking to some potential collaborators that I'm excited about collaborating with. One being Layla Hathaway, who I'm like a huge Layla fan. And so we've been talking about working on some stuff that, yeah, we're gonna nail it pretty soon. I'm always working on new music, so it's like tough to pinpoint, but I'm excited about this next, the R&B Love installment. I think it's gonna be everybody's favorite, because I realize a lot of my listeners, we kind of grew up on like late 90s, early 2000s R&B, so I think it's gonna be like a moment of like reconnection for us. I think I would like to see R&B accepted on more accepted on a bigger level, because I think right now R&B is very, it's like minimized to like a specific thing, and I think that there are different derivatives of R&B, because you have like more classic R&B, but then you have like, you do have the more modern like Bryson with like trap soul, you know what I mean? Like that's a thing, that's its own thing, but it's still a derivative of R&B. But then you also have like alt R&B, which is like SZA and like, you know what I mean? I think like there's words are free, so I just wish that we would like correctly label black music and give it its opportunity to be what it is, you know what I mean, and not force it into one space. And so for me, when it comes to R&B in the future, I would just love to see people recognize R&B for what it is and not try to include all music from a black artist into the R&B space. Like there are black rock stars, there are black pop stars, like let them be amazing as they are in those spaces, so that we can stop diluting R&B and saying, I think that's the issue, and why R&B is being so suppressed. We've decided that everything must fit into that space. So I think it'll be, if we can more easily identify what R&B is, then we can more easily identify what R&B isn't. So that's my hope for it. Hey, what's up? It's Kenyon Dixon, a.k.a. R&B Kenny, if you really love R&B and you're tapped in with 24/7 HH.